And good Tuesday morning. My name is Ryan Belmore, and joining me also from WhatsUpNewp is Mr. Frank Prosnitz. Frank, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Ryan. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. Frank, I couldn't help. I was going to tell you off air, but I'll tell you on air here. Yesterday, we got a note from a beloved reader. Ryan, you are finally putting together a decent local news blog. Thank you.
Oh.
10 years in.
Yeah.
I put that in the kudos folder.
There you go. Well, that works. Well, at least they notice. It may take a little time.
I know. It just popped up on my screen, but
yeah.
We are starting. We're continuing some important conversations, but really ramping back up some important conversations.
This is a big election year for Rhode Island. It'll be a big election year locally. We haven't heard any announcements, official announcements anyway, locally. Although the mayor has said that she's going to run for re-election, but we haven't heard much in local contests. Heard a little bit on a legislative level, but on a statewide level and congressional level a lot. And one of them is Seth Magaziner, who moved from the gubernatorial race to the congressional race. He's a general treasurer in Rhode Island. He's term limited as general treasurer. And with the retirement of Jim Langevin from Congress, he decided to jump into that race, one of about 1,000. Well, maybe not quite that.
Seth joins us. And I'll get my question out of the way, Mr. Magaziner. Did you get an opportunity to march in all the rainy St. Patrick's Day parades last month?
I did. Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me back. It's good to be here. And yes, I was at the Newport Parade again this year. It was great to be back, even with the weather, and West Warwick and Providence as well.
No question that when and if you get to Congress, there'll be a lot of rainy days. So, and it may not be the weather outside.
Yeah.
No, it'll be an interesting time. My first question off the bat is one that we just came to the end of the next reporting period for campaign finance, and wondering how you did.
Well, we did very well. I'm running for Congress because we need leaders in Washington who can cut through the nonsense and deliver results and get things done for working people in our state. Rhode Islanders are worried. They're worried about the cost of living. They're worried about the economy, about their kids' education. And I'm very humbled and very excited that we are off to such a strong start in this campaign. And I think the reason for that is that I have a track record of delivering results across District 2 as state treasurer on issues that people care about, like school construction and clean energy development and strengthening the retirement system. So we had a very good first launch to the campaign and fundraising quarter. I'm very humbled to have had the support of hundreds of Rhode Islanders who believe in what we're doing and believe that we need good leadership in Washington. And so I'm excited.
Can you give us a figure for the first quarter?
On fundraising, yeah, we exceeded $1.4 million in the first quarter. And the thing that I'm most proud of is that more than 70% of our contributions came from Rhode Islanders. I think close to 80% did. And from organizations that support Rhode Islanders as well. So we're doing very well. And it's because, again, I think we're the campaign that is the best suited to keep the seat in Democratic hands, which is very important. And I have a track record as state treasurer of delivering results all across District 2.
You apparently have done very well at getting the labor endorsement from the AFL-CIO and many local labor unions. What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to the fact that people in Rhode Island and District 2 know me, and they know me as a champion of working people in the state. The school construction program that I spearheaded as state treasurer has put more than 20,000 people to work statewide, including in lots of good union construction jobs, building back our schools and improving learning environments for teachers and students. The work that I've done at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank has built out clean energy projects all across Rhode Island, all across District 2, creating good jobs. And I've always supported workers' rights, ensuring that workers get fair pay, the right to organize, and workplace safety protections. And it's because of that track record that we've earned the endorsement now of 13 different organizations that represent workers in Rhode Island, including the AFL-CIO, as you note. So very excited to have that support. And as a member of Congress for the 2nd District in Rhode Island, I will always be a champion for working people in our state.
You were in the gubernatorial race for a while, and then you jumped over to the congressional race. Now that you're out of that gubernatorial race, are you supporting any particular candidate?
I'll support whoever the Democratic nominee in the race is.
And I presume that's the same for any other position. Although I think I'm not sure that we have any other contested position at the moment.
Yeah. My approach in all of those state races will be to support the Democratic candidate in November.
I know there are a lot of national issues for sure, but tell me what you think as a congressman you can bring back specifically to the people of Rhode Island.
Well, a number of things. So top of mind for me is we have to make it easier for people to pay their bills and keep up with the rising cost of living. So lowering healthcare costs is going to be a priority for me. Pushing to give Medicare and Medicaid the power to negotiate with the prescription drug companies to lower drug costs is a huge priority. We can help people keep up with their bills by making childcare more affordable and enacting universal pre-K. Not only will that make it easier for people to save money on childcare, it'll also make it easier for people to re-enter the workforce and earn more of a family income by expanding access to affordable childcare. And then transitioning to a clean energy economy. One of the things that I'm very proud of about District 2 in Rhode Island is that we are the birthplace of the offshore wind industry in America. We can put lots of people to work transitioning to a clean energy economy and preparing for the impacts of climate change here in our state. We have to do it, and we have an opportunity to create a lot of economic opportunity in the process. So those are some of the things that will be my priorities when I get to Congress, and it's based on the feedback that I hear from Rhode Islanders all across the district of what they would like to see their next member of Congress prioritize.
So we know this is going to could be a tough election for Democrats come November, which means that some of these issues will be hard to push forward. In Congress or in the House of Representatives, when it came to a bill to lower insulin costs, not one Republican voted in favor of that. Have you heard what the excuses were, or it seems incredible?
Well, this is why it's so important that Democrats hold the second congressional district so that we have the best chance possible of holding a majority in Congress. What the Republicans in Washington have shown is that they are in the pockets of the drug companies. And you're right, they voted against capping insulin costs. They voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They vote time and time again with the big drug companies and with the big industries and not in the interest of working people. So that's why it's so important that we hold this seat and that we have strong Democratic leadership in Washington.
Is my perception correct when I think of our reliance upon fossil fuels has us in the position we're in today with rising gas prices instead of creating the alternatives that would make us less dependent and worldwide less dependent on Russian oil?
100%, absolutely. We need to transition to a clean energy economy, not only because it'll help mitigate the impacts of climate change, but also because it will make us less beholden on the Vladimir Putins of the world and other dictators. So we have to redouble our efforts in this area. And a big priority of mine is going to be pushing the country to make these investments, transitioning to clean energy, transitioning to wind and solar and energy efficiency, and investing in smart technologies that, again, can create a lot of good jobs, put people to work, lower our reliance on autocrats like Vladimir Putin, and also reduce the impacts of climate change. It's a win-win. We have to move aggressively. And I think it's only appropriate that the next representative from the second congressional district in Rhode Island be a leader on this, because Rhode Island is a leader on clean energy and on the front lines of climate change.
So the reality is today that we have gas prices that are maybe slowly coming down. We're releasing oil from our reserves. Would you favor a federal and a state gas tax holiday?
I have come out with supporting a federal gas tax holiday because people are worried and people are feeling the pain already of the rising cost of gas. No doubt about it. We just came through a period where in 1 month, the cost of a gallon of gasoline went up 80 cents in 1 month. That is a historic increase. And so I do think that Congress needs to be aggressive in helping people keep up with the cost of living. So yes, I do support suspending the federal gas tax. I support tapping into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help lower prices that way. But then those are just short-term measures. Over the long run, as you noted earlier, the only way that we're going to address the rising cost of energy in a sustainable way is by transitioning to clean energy sources. I'll give you one example. One of the first things that I worked on as state treasurer was setting up these clean energy funding programs at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. And one of our first projects was the town of West Warwick built windmills and put up solar panels to help power their town buildings. The town of West Warwick has not paid an electric bill on their town buildings in 5 years. And they locked in those lower energy costs 5 years ago because they made an early investment in clean energy. And that's saving taxpayers in West Warwick millions of dollars now. And I'm sure that there are a lot of other communities that wish that they had done what West Warwick did and made those clean energy investments 5-6 years ago. So that's what we need more of. We need more of a focus on programs like the one that I started that help communities like West Warwick transition to clean energy, saving taxpayers money.
I would be remiss if I didn't touch on what's going on in the Ukraine and whether you think that we're doing enough and whether you think that there is some point, even if Russia doesn't infringe upon NATO territory, but there might be at some point where, in fact, there has to be any kind of military intervention.
Yeah. Well, what Vladimir Putin's doing with this illegal and immoral war, it's truly horrific. And the evidence is mounting that there have been significant human rights abuses in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It is not right that Putin is invading a peaceful democratic nation, and the world cannot stand for this. So I support the strongest possible economic and diplomatic sanctions. I do not support putting American troops directly into engagements with Russian forces. But the good news is that because of the sanctions we put in place, because of the military aid, the equipment that we are sending to Ukraine, the Russians have been knocked back on their heels. They've had to retreat from around the capital. They're having to explain why their goals are shifting because this has turned out to be a much tougher war than they expected. So we should keep up the diplomatic pressure. We should keep up the economic pressure. Here in Rhode Island, I made a move the week after the Russian invasion to have the state get out of any investments that we have in Russia because we don't want to be supporting Putin's war in any way. And that's just one part of a global effort to create a coordinated response against what Putin is doing. And it's working. So we just got to keep the pressure up.
Do we know if there are institutions in Rhode Island that have investments or had investments in Russia that may be pulling back? I'm thinking like people with a lot of money in investments, such as the Rhode Island Foundation, such as Brown University Endowment, such as RISD Endowment.
I don't know. You'd have to ask them, but I can tell you that for the state of Rhode Island and the Rhode Island Pension Fund, which I manage, we did not have a lot of Russian exposure. It was about 0.3% of our total assets. So very small percentage of our assets, but we made the decision to divest from all of that because, again, we do not want the state of Rhode Island to be supporting this war. It is not in accordance with Rhode Island values. And I hope that other investors will do the same, as many are.
I've seen a list of companies that are doing business and still doing business, American companies still doing business in Russia. Some have pulled out for sure, but others have stayed the course. Should we, as a country, either publicize those or take any action against those companies to encourage them to pull out of Russia?
Yes. This needs to be a coordinated global effort. And my message to those companies would be: democracy is good for business. Peace is good for business. What Vladimir Putin is doing is bad for business globally. We do not want to encourage that kind of behavior. And so, if you're a business that's operating in Russia, you may take a short-term financial hit from getting out, but over the long run, you will do much better financially if we promote democracy and peace worldwide.
A couple of things we touched on earlier. One was fundraising, and the other was the use of these great lobby groups like the pharmaceutical groups to be able to pressure certain congressional people into taking certain action. How big a priority should campaign finance reform be, and how big a priority should there be in terms of controlling some of these lobby groups?
It needs to be a very high priority. We need campaign finance reform in this country. We need to overturn the disastrous Citizens United decision that has allowed unlimited dark money to flow into elections. We need better disclosure of political spending, and we need tougher limits on political fundraising and spending. I will support efforts for strong campaign finance reform as a member of Congress. I think we all know that it's never going to happen if the Republicans are able to take control of the chamber again. So it's just another reason why it's so important that we keep this seat and the United States Congress in Democratic control.
Climate change is a big issue in Newport, all around Rhode Island. How big an issue is it with you, and what are some of the steps you think you can take?
Yeah, well, when I opened up, I mentioned transitioning to a clean energy economy as one of my top 3 priorities that I'm going to fight for in Congress. Because you're right, climate change is an existential threat to us here in the Ocean State, and also because we have an opportunity to put a lot of people to work transitioning to a clean energy economy. So there are a lot of things that Congress can do. Congress can remove some of the restrictions on investment into clean energy technology that the fossil fuel companies lobbied to have put into place. A lot of people don't realize that there are actual federal legal restrictions for investment in clean energy projects that don't exist for fossil fuels. That's something that we can do something about. Certainly expanding and encouraging the expansion of offshore wind. In Rhode Island, we're a pioneer. We showed that it can work here in North America, and now we need to expand offshore wind so that we can transition to a clean energy economy as well. And then more funding for resilience, because even if we are able to successfully, and when we are able to successfully transition to clean energy sources, we still have to prepare for rising sea levels and extreme weather. So more funding for communities statewide and nationally to make the infrastructure upgrades that they need to prepare for the impacts of climate change is also something that I'm going to prioritize as a member of Congress.
So this week we expect to see the confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice, and not without a contentious hearing, but also an incredible step for us in this country. We've also seen polling that shows the lack of trust in the Supreme Court, the fact that people think it has been really politicized. How do we address that? And two particular things that people point to. One, there's talk of expanding the Supreme Court, and secondly, should we consider term limits?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think the best thing that we can do to strengthen the court and to strengthen people's trust in the court is nominate good people and support those nominees. So, Judge Jackson is a great example of someone who is eminently qualified, has the perfect background to be a Supreme Court justice, has received high marks in every judicial role that she's been in up until this point. And so, if you want to restore people's faith in the institution, the first step is appoint good people. And she is one. So I'm very glad to see that her nomination is moving forward. It is moving forward in a bipartisan way. I see, as of this morning, when I checked the news, I think 3 Republican senators were indicating that they intended to vote in favor of her. That's a positive step forward. I think we should consider other types of reform and whether the benefits would outweigh the risks. But at the end of the day, having served on the board of Common Cause of Rhode Island, having worked on clean government issues and reform issues for over a decade, I can tell you that it's not just about the structure, it's about the people and having the right people in the right positions. And that clearly applies to her.
I've had conversations with John Marion about term limits, and I was someone who was very much for them. Now he's got me questioning it, because he talks about how, in fact, term limits sometimes shift the power to people like lobbyists and other folks who are in their long term. One last question before we let you go. What sets you apart from your opponents?
Well, the fact that I have had a real impact district-wide. As state treasurer, I have spent the last 7.5 years going to every corner of District 2, talking with people, hearing their concerns, working collaboratively with people to solve problems. And we've had a tremendous track record of delivering results district-wide. The school construction program that I started, for example, is building new elementary schools in Cranston. The clean energy programs that I started, as I mentioned, have helped the town of West Warwick go completely renewable. The work that I've done to strengthen the retirement system is benefiting tens of thousands of people across District 2 by strengthening their retirement security. So I think the thing that sets me apart is, everybody in the race will talk about how they're the ones who can deliver results for District 2, but I'm the only one who's shown that I can and that I have delivered results for people in every corner of the district, from Burrillville to Westerly and everywhere in between. People can trust that when I get to Washington, I will deliver results for Rhode Island because I have been doing it for the last 7 years.
Seth, I want to thank you very much for being with us this morning. Good luck to you throughout the campaign. I am sure we will talk again.
Thank you. Great to see you guys.
Good to see you. Ryan, that mute button?
Yeah,
How
I
about
put it
that?
on mute so that way, just to be safe. And but thank you, Seth. If I yell a little louder, maybe you'll hear me. But we really
packed a
appreciate it.
packed a lot into 20 minutes.
Yeah, I guess it's about time we start talking about. Let's see here. So November 8th will be the election day this year. If I am
General election. We have a primary
election.
before that.
So we'll be doing a primary in Rhode Island on September 13th. So for those of you in Congressional District 2, which is pretty much the western part of Rhode Island, you will have a primary on September 13th. Not far away at all.
No, we're reaching out to everybody to offer them the opportunity to come on and answer our questions. Sometimes they may not want to, but we give them that opportunity.
And Frank, think about how important that primary is going to be. There's going to be a lot of candidates. If we start at the top, which would be Congressional, you'll have a primary there. You'll have a primary for governor.
Right.
You'll have a primary for lieutenant governor.
Correct.
And then your local races, there may or may not be primary.
And potentially, we've heard a lot of names thrown out in terms of treasurer, only one that's announced, but we'll see what happens there. Perhaps a primary there. On the Republican side, we'll have a primary for the congressional race. Then don't know what happens down the line, with other candidates for the Republicans, but it's going to be an active season. And then one thing I would encourage people to do, as I do, is look at their campaign finance reports, see the money they're raising, who they're getting it from. If you have the time to look, we'll try to help you along with that. Who they're getting the money from, and who they're spending money on. When some of the vendors, and it'll give you an idea of those people who are looking to be able to influence those people who are going into office. Very important when you think, and I just throw this out. People wonder what's happening with Senator Manchin. This guy seems to be voting in certain ways. Just understand that this is a guy who owns a coal company, who does a lot of business on his yacht. Cinema out in Arizona is she gets a lot of money from drug companies. Got to look at where that influence comes from, and then you'll have a better understanding of who these people are and whether or not these are people you want to support, and maybe you want to support those types of people. But interesting stuff coming up. There will not be a vacuum for political news.
Yeah, and a couple more dates, just so folks know. Candidates have until June 29th until they officially are signed up to announce. So the last week of June. Your voter registration deadline for the primary is going to be August 14th. The primary will be September 13th. Then the general election will be on Tuesday, November 8th. I expect everybody to be registered by then. But if you're not, the voter registration for the general election in November is October 9th. So all of that information. I am not a smart man. All I did was go to vote.sos.ri.gov, Secretary of State's website. You can find all that information. You can look at your ballot. You can make sure if you moved, you can make sure you're up to date. Encourage everybody to do that over the next couple months before August.
We have a good system in Rhode Island. The best system is that people get out and vote and express themselves.
All right, Mr. Prosnitz. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today.
Nice of you to stop by.
Thank you for having me. I know I had so many great questions today. All right. On behalf of Frank Prosnitz, all of us here at WhatsUpNewp, we want to thank Rhode Island General Treasurer Seth Magaziner for joining us to talk about his run for Congress. Thanks for watching.